What's going on, fam? Welcome back to episode number 15 of The Boot Report. My name is Noah Cavanaugh. In today's episode, we have a very juicy one. We are going to compare the GX1 and the new Phantom 6. We're going to talk about how Adidas blatantly lied to us about one of their football boots, and of course, answer your questions. Let's move to section 1, the weekly news. Now, for those of you who know, I compete in Ironman events. Last weekend, I had a Ironman 70.3. We'll just rip through this really quick for those of you who care. And it was 70.3 Cairns, which was an amazing race. I'll put photos up on screen. I was 13th out of 129 in my age group with a time of 4 hours, 35 minutes, and 3 seconds. I swam 128 pace per 100 meters in the swim with 27:54 as my time. My bike split was 2:26:16, which was pretty slow in terms of what I'm usually capable of. It was quite windy. I rode at about 36.75K an hour or 22.83 miles an hour for those of you who use that system. And then my half marathon was a 1:35:02, which is a 4:27 per K pace or 7:09 per mile pace. So I was 64th out of 1,230 people who competed that day who weren't obviously professional triathletes. So pretty cool, amazing experience. My next one is in September, so that's super exciting. Now, straight over to latest colorway drops. Now, we got some really cool stuff this week. So the women's F50, which we will talk about in just a sec as it relates to Adidas completely lying to us, but the women's F50, which is called the SparkFusion pack. It's a kind of a light lilac purple colorway. It actually looks quite nice. It's sort of a lighter version of the OG F50 that came out when the new F50 Elite generation released. So it's a little bit lighter than that, and it still has sort of that Buzz Lightyear type look to it, which is really cool. I don't actually have the pair that I reviewed for the Ultra Football page here in studio because it wasn't my pair. I didn't actually put them on. I was working with a women's player to film that video. I was doing the tech specs, she was doing the playing, and it was awesome. Rachel is an absolute goat, so shout out. And you can find that video if you want some more tech specs, I guess. But basically, the point behind that boot is they've narrowed the heel area. They've made the underside of the arch a little bit higher, and then they've put a little bit more volume in that midfoot, and then they've sort of narrowed out the shape in general, and they have a new sole plate that's more all conical studs. What this does bring up, though, is the original women's high cut or mid cut F50 that we got was not actually designed by women and for women. Adidas said it was, but this new SparkFusion pack is a completely different boot that feels on feet completely differently. I've had both on feet. Obviously, you saw my mid cut review, and those boots I think sold a while ago. But that launch colorway mid-cut model fits dramatically different than the new SparkFusion pack, which is actually a women's fit football boot. Very, very weird. I'm not sure why I'm not sure why Adidas had to go down the route of completely lying to us about this. They probably meant the first one to be, okay, if it catches on and a lot of female players wear it, then it's a good thing. Otherwise, it's just at this point, we just sort of have to use it as a marketing ploy, whereas this one actually is a different feel. Like you put this one on and you're like, whoa, this is dramatically different. And I will not be personally reviewing these boots. I'll just leave it up to the Ultra Football channel for you guys to go over there and check my video out on that channel, particularly because the boot actually doesn't fit me at all. Like I've tried to put my foot in it and my feet are just simply too wide. It's almost like the True Socks. So True Socks has a pair of football boots called the Tenacity 1 or I think they're on the 2 now. But the Tenacity boots, when I lived in Detroit, I had the opportunity to buy a pair at a local soccer store, and I went in, got a pair in 9 and a 9.5 US in the store, tried to get them on my feet. No can do. They're way too narrow for my feet. So, and it's not like I wouldn't like to review both of these boots. They just literally don't fit my foot. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to try and do like a playtest video on them, et cetera, which is fine. So latest F50 from Adidas. It's about time, but I am a little annoyed that Adidas lied completely to our faces about the fact that they had like a women's fit football boot. So yeah, interesting. Interesting, interesting. Next, we had the New Balance Tekela version 5, also about time, that released. They've launched it. I think it comes out here in Australia on Tuesday. So what's today? Saturday, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, the 24th. And I will definitely be getting a pair. And I don't think you'll see a video of mine pop up on Ultra because New Balance doesn't have the marketing budget, et cetera, et cetera. But needless to say, you will get a video on my channel because the Tekela version 4 Plus and the version 4 really were boots that I really rated. I thought they were super comfortable. I wore them quite a bit in training back in Flower City in 23 and 22 for the V4, and it's a boot that I definitely think is going to be moving in the right direction based on leaks and stuff that we've gotten, and a friend of mine who actually has a pair already, sort of a pre-release pair. They are going to be a lot more similar, I believe, to the new 442 Elite. So it's kind of a micro textured fake leather material almost, as opposed to a knit. So V4 and V4 Plus were knit material boots. I don't think I actually have a pair of Tekelas anymore. I think I sold them. But the V5, I think, is going to be a non-knit based football boot. It looks to still have knit in the collar area, but we will see anyway. So New Balance Tekela V5. I'm actually quite excited for these. The sole plate doesn't look like it's changed at all, but the upper looks completely different, which is going to be interesting and fun, and hopefully provide something a little bit different to the boot market for New Balance, who traditionally have been the 442, and then the Furon and the Tekela are sort of the same boot because they're both the same hypo knit upper. So interesting and really cool from the New Balance brand. Then we also got Nike's Fear Nothing pack for the women's Euros. These look fantastic in my opinion. They're essentially a one-to-one color refresh of the 2012 Euro Clash pack. One of my favorite boots of all time is the Laser 4s, which came in the Clash pack in 2012. They were white and green, and I actually wore a pair back in 2012 or 2013 maybe, 2012 I think. And I love those boots. They were really wide. They fit really, really well. And I'm just really bummed that they don't produce a boot like that anymore, because they were very similar to the upper material. They made that particular generation out of what was the precursor to Fly Touch Plus that's on the CTR? Now I'm forgetting. I don't know why I'm forgetting. Kangalite. Thank you. The Kangalite material. So the Kangalite material is what the Tiempo 3 Elite at the time was. And then they made this one out of a really nice Kangalite material that felt way better than what Fly Touch Plus does on the Tiempo 10, which is really interesting. So we have the Tiempo with the white and green. It's kind of an emerald green base. It's okay for me. Like I'll rate each one of these. The Tiempo's okay. The Vapor with the white that ombres into sort of pink and then red is sick. It's one of the coolest Vapor colorways that they've put out so far. I think it looks awesome. It looks really classy. It looks really good on pitch as well. We saw players like Cole Palmer and some other players who are in the Club World Cup wear them, as well as some of the international games as well. So those are really cool. And then the Phantom is white in the back with blue with tiny yellow accents. That one looks pretty good. I'm sort of this new Phantom, which we'll talk about in a sec. This new Phantom is okay from a design perspective. I don't like it as much as the GX, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the white and blue one definitely looks nice it's like better than average, I would say. So I would go Vapor is first for me, just as far as colors go, then the Phantom, then the Tiempo. Then we also had the KidSuper and Puma pack. So KidSuper is a designer, I believe. It's a luxury designer. And they did a collab with Puma that looks like it has kind of these little sticker things all over it. So I'll put a picture up on screen of what those look like. But the KidSuper pack basically has the Ultra, which is a all pink boot. The Ultra, I think, actually looks really cool. I think the Ultra is really dope. We saw it on whose feet did we see it on? PSG players. I'm going to forget. I'll find a photo. But we got those. Those are cool. I'm a huge sucker for solid colors or monochromatic boots, I think those look really, really good. Think all red Premier 3, right? Things like that that are really cool. This is obviously an all pink one. The Future is a baby blue and a kind of royal blue, navy blue with pink accents. It's okay. And then the King, I think, is just a miss. It's like a dark navy. It's like a black with a electric green and sort of a throw up green with pink accent. It just really doesn't look very good, in my opinion. So, okay, Future, really crappy, pun intended, King, and the Ultra looks good. The only problem for me is that this is the 900th colorway this year of Puma, so I'm a little colorwayed out for this, but needless to say, another pack from Ultra, and it's cool, or excuse me, from Puma, and it's cool to see that Puma is doing collaborations with a lot of people. I think when you have a brand like Nike who doesn't really do collaborations all that often, and when they do, it's sort of internal, right? So they're doing the TN. So they're doing one of their sneakers with one of their football boots as opposed to bringing in somebody different. It was cool when Messi and Bad Bunny did I've got the boots down here somewhere. But when they did the F50 Bad Bunny collab, that's really cool because there's a story behind it, and they made a street shoe and I think some apparel wear with it as well, which was really cool. So that to me is really fun when you get sort of cross-platform or cross-industry. But when you have something like the TN or the Air Zoom, whatever, Air Max Vapors, those are fine, but they just don't do it for me as much necessarily as some of these collabs. Although this KidSuper collab is probably on the lower part of my list as far as the collabs that have come out this year. New in the shop. Now we move on to new in the shop. There's only 2 boots that you guys haven't seen because of the Ironman. I spent a lot of time last week just cooling off a little bit and resting, which has been amazing for my body. Really looking forward to crushing it. The ones that you've already seen, I have the Umbro boots, I have the F50 Messies that you've already seen, and then I also have the Morelia 2 in the ruby red colorway that I'm also going to be reviewing as of Monday this next week, or tomorrow maybe, depending on my time. So those, and then the 2 new boots that you guys haven't seen yet are the high top and the low top Phantom 6. Now here we go. So Phantom 6, this is obviously the launch colorway, and I was lucky enough to get the low top in an AG sole plate, so the brand new AG sole plate, and then I got the high top in the FG. So I'll be able to kind of cover both sets of sole plates and both upper materials, or both upper changes, I guess, or variations, all in one video. So that's something that I think is going to be really interesting. This is obviously grip knit. We have a very similar look to the GX1, which that is the reason for the comparison with this one, which we'll get into in a minute. And in fact, I might swap out the one that I have here, which is an FG version, for the AG model, just so we can do a more one-to-one comparison. But these ones look actually pretty cool, I think. As far as aesthetics go, I like the fact that they've differentiated them. So they've got silver, obviously, in the rear quarter of the top end model. The top, not top end, these are both top end, but you get what I'm saying. The DF model, or whatever they're calling this, the mid-cut model. And then I like the fact that they've differentiated it with a black knit here on the low top model. It just gives a little bit of a visual distinction, because I think in the GX1 generation, and then obviously even more potently in the Phantom GX2 and Luna 2 generations, the models were identical except for that tiny little sock. So hats off to Nike for making something that's a little bit visually more distinctive on either side. So now we have things that are, get it in front of the camera for you there. So things that actually look a little bit different, which is really nice. And I think from a visual perspective, this is going to make a lot of people happy, because it goes back to a generation of boot and a aesthetic of boot that I think a lot of people really enjoyed, myself included. The GX1 was one of the coolest looking boots of that time, and I think it's one of the best looking Phantoms, period, that they've ever put out, even despite its kind of 2-layer upper and all that stuff, so which is pretty cool. All right, section 2, we move on to boot talk. Now we are going to do the weekly boot comparison between the GX1 that I have here in this absolutely stunning purple pack, and yes, I still have the sticker on the back because it's a brand new pair of football boots, and the new Phantom. So this is going to be with the you can see the turf here. I'll actually put it over the overhead camera. That's why it's on. So the overhead camera here, and you can see there's some turf pellets inside of this AG already because I have filmed my video with Ultra already for the Phantom 6, and I've only put these on for about 15 minutes, but I think it will give me at least enough of a knowledge of, okay, how do these fit? How do these perform compared to the GX1, which I obviously have very extensive experience with because it was almost exclusively my match day boot for my 2023 season and the tail end of my 22 season. So in terms of weekly boot comparison, sole plate, upper, heel, comfort, performance, design, lace area, and X factor, those are our 8 categories. So let's go over some sole plate. So we have, actually what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add in, we're going to talk about low tops for now. But what I am going to do is go and grab, do I have, oh, I do. I have my custom pair. Okay, one sec. All right, here we go. So custom pair, and these are the AG model of the GX1. So this will be actually, I think, a better comparison. So we'll just go like for like in this comparison. Here we go. Okay, so from a sole plate perspective first, these are 2 sole plates that I have had, well, the GX1 sole plate I've had extensive experience with here on this side. As you can see, it's absolutely beat to crap. I've totally ruined it. And the studs are now very, very short because I've walked all over concrete with them at the Flower City Stadium. And it's a sole plate that has worked really well for me. I wore these on AG and FG surfaces. It's a sole plate that I really never had issues with. The only time that I was slipping around was when Rochester got so cold that it started getting icy on the pitch, and then the ice would build up on the bottom of the shoes. But that was true with FG boots as well as AG. So I don't really mark that against. However, even though this sole plate is very good and is very simple, the only real issue with it is that it's got quite a bit of snap to it. Oh my gosh, I am putting pellets everywhere. So the only issue that I had with it was that the structural rigidity of this boot wasn't really up to par with what I think it probably could have been or should have been. And that's something that is going to take points away. And I would say that with my 15 minutes worth of playing experience with this new one, it is remarkably better. This ridge here in the middle of the boot, you can kind of see, is excellent. It's got a ton of structural stability. It feels like Nike have actually listened to us with both this and the firm ground sole plate, despite the firm ground sole plate still having that cyclone pattern in the forefoot. Although, to be fair, now that they've moved away from the marketing of, hey guys, this is going to be great for women because it pivots. No, it doesn't. Objectively, it does not do better than something like this. So shut up, Nike. But they've gone to more of a, hey, this is firm ground specific. Fine for firm ground. Fine for firm ground. But don't tell me that this is better for pivot power, because that's bullshit. This, however, is an absolutely phenomenal AG sole plate. Dare I say it's one of the best on the market already. And I've only had about 15 minutes into it. And if you can tell, look at the difference in width. So it's way more balanced and wide on that new sole plate. Lots more width here in the forefoot area and in the toe box. It's much more anatomical and sort of rounded as opposed to the GX1, which is a lot more pointy, which I know a lot of people did like, but it was sort of a split opinion as far as what was better. So the sole plate goes to the Phantom 6. Now, as far as the upper goes, this is a situation that I think is going to split opinions. Some people are going to really rate this really thin one-piece kind of flat grip knit upper, which is totally fair. But this new upper is even softer, and it's got these little ridges in it, which I actually really liked on the GX2. I thought that it gave you just a little bit more control as far as not necessarily control, but a little bit less aggressive grip. So I am a huge fan of the GX1 for obvious reasons, but I think the GX2 and the ridges just made it feel a little bit more natural. I said this in either my playtest or my 1 month review of the GX2, was that the ridges in the grip knit really sort of muted the effect of the grip in a way that was still usable and still different and still unique to any other boot that you would wear, but it was a lot more manageable and it wasn't as hyper grippy and aggressive as this one. So I'm actually going to give the upper of the GX2, or excuse me, the GX2, the Phantom 6. I'm going to give this one the win here because I actually do think this is going to be a lot more functional for more people. Now, moving on to the heel area, they're basically the same. There's not much difference as far as heel padding goes, keeping in mind that this is obviously an incredibly used pair of football boots, but the new GX1 and the new GX2, if we bring back my Purple Thunder pair, it's basically the same. This one feels maybe slightly softer from the actual touch of the materials, but the padding and everything else feels about the same. So I am going to give it a tie from that perspective. One thing to note, though, about the shape, if you can see here, I'll take out the used one just because it'll be a little bit more of a one-to-one comparison. You notice here, the heel is actually a little bit wider in this new Phantom 6, which is going to be interesting from a testing perspective because I tend to have a much more narrow heel area and then it gets wider in this kind of section here on the side. So I'm wondering if everything about this boot is actually going to be perfect from this point forward. There you go, this point forward. But the heel area may be a little bit too big. I didn't experience a whole lot of issues when I tested them for about 15 minutes at Ultra, filming the video there. But that remains to be seen. So from the heel area, I'm going to give it a tie across the board. Now, as far as comfort goes, this is only really going to be a comparison between the two brand new models because as much as I would love to compare them on long-term comfort, I obviously have very, very limited experience in the Phantom 6. And by the way, a 15-minute play test really quickly is enough for me to get a good idea of what a boot's going to be about. However, I don't feel like I have the credibility until I've tested it for at least an hour or two in a proper session before I hand you guys information, at least as an initial play test, so to speak. So most of these comments that I'm making are about kind of the initial feel of putting on a GX1 on one foot and a Phantom 6 on the other foot that are both brand new. So the ones that we have here. So this is a situation where as far as comfort goes straight out of the box, I'm actually going to give it to the new Phantom 6. And this is going to be completely dependent on your foot shape. So the foot shape or the general lasting of this boot is, as I said, from the sole plate, a lot wider. This upper is also a little bit softer. So it does give you a little bit more width, particularly in that midfoot. So as you can see with the shape differences, they did really widen this just a little bit and made it a little bit more round in the toe box area, which helps my foot shape a lot. So as far as objective comfort straight out of the box, I'm actually going to go with the Phantom 6 on this one. But again, with the big asterisk that will remain to be seen as far as when the boots are actually broken in, is the heel area going to be too wide? And is that going to cause problems and blah, 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 blah. Because once the boots are broken in on the GX1 side, these fit me perfectly. They are still a little bit tight around the forefoot area and the toe box, but I'm okay with that because that's what I just enjoy in my football boots. So, but it's going to be a personal preference a little bit. Then as far as design, we've already gotten into this one. I think the design, unless they change some visual aspects on this one, the swoosh placement and just the way this boot looks, I think is actually a lot better. I like the way that the flat, even though funny enough, the functionality of the grip knit upper on the new Phantom 6, I think is a little bit better because it actually feels a lot more like, it feels a lot more manageable, whereas the flat actually, I think, looks a lot better. So this follows a lot of the design language of what I think a Phantom kind of looks like. This does too. It might grow on me, especially with different colorways, but this one in particular, this colorway in particular, but also just the general kind of look of the GX1 just has this like really aggressive, awesome look to it. So the design for me, pretty easy one. That's going to go to the GX1. Now, as far as the lacing area, that's a tie. They are literally identical. All of the overlays as far as the grip knit part over top of the fly knit basically stops at the same point. The laces are the same kind of two-hole design all the way down. The laces are literally identical as well. There's no visual or feel difference between the two, so that's a tie. And then as far as X Factor goes, this one was a tough one for me, but I think I'm actually going to give the X Factor to the GX1. The reason for that is because the X Factor is for a boot that either completely has something different and has something really unique, which both boots have. Both boots have the grip knit material. Yes, the new sole plate of the Cyclone 360 is really good, and it's a lot more rigid even than the FG stud pattern here. And I'm talking about the FG to FG comparison and AG to AG comparison for that matter. But as far as X Factor, I think I still think the GX1 in a decade's time or in even 2 decades time, we're going to look back on the GX1 and be like, wow, that revolutionized this era of football boots in terms of bringing grip elements to consumers in a way that is really functional, really comfortable, and just really good all around, which is kind of sweet. So X Factor goes to the GX1. So in terms of comparison, we have Phantom 6 with 1, 2, 3, and 3 ties. So that'll put it at 6 points. And then for the GX1, we have 1, 2 with 3 ties. So that also gives 5 points. So the new winner is actually going to be the Phantom 6. Now, this might change as I start to test them a lot more and start to get them a little bit more on pitch and sort of, I don't know, get a better feel for what they're like. But in my initial testing of the Phantom 6, I think it's going to be one of those boots that even if I don't like the look of it maybe as much as the GX1, it's a boot that fits my wide feet very well straight out of the box. When I first put them on in the ultra little cage that we do our videos in, I was like, whoa, these are substantially different than the GX1 in terms of comfort for my foot shape straight out of the box. So hopefully for those of you wide-footed players watching this, that'll make you pretty excited. Next, moving on to Wear Your Boots Wednesday. Hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday. Every Wednesday, wherever it is your time, you can go to Instagram, take a photo of you in the boots or a full body shot of you in the boots. You just have to be in the boots. I don't want you holding them and whatever. Use the hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday. You have to tag me in the story so I actually see it. I will repost it. That's how you know you've been entered into the competition. And the hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday winner, we have 2 this week. One is for just objectively, the boots are unbelievable. And then we have one that is just pure vibe. And I think you guys will probably, for those of you who keep up with my Instagram stories, you guys will know which one is which. For the boots, we are back with another winner for this. I think this is the most winningest person, not only because they submit every week, but because the boots that they have in their collection are absolutely amazing. At Cloudy_Rice. Cloudy Rice had a pair of white and orange Mizuno Wave Ignitus 3s that were so beautiful looking. The Wave Ignitus is one of the coolest looking football boots, in my opinion. It was one of the OG power boots that really sort of epitomized that free kick knuckleball type vibe before. And obviously the Predator was sort of that free kick to kind of boot. And we've got some other T90s were that kind of shot power, etc. But the Wave Ignitus was just that sort of dark horse boot. And they were remarkably comfortable as well. Of course, being a Mizuno product. So hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday goes to Cloudy Rice. And then as far as the vibe winner easily goes to Frank Disco Music, who was singing or it looked like he was recording music in a studio wearing a pair of Adidas F50 Adi Zeros, the original synthetic chameleon model, while recording music. It was sort of that boots only summer vibe and just absolute goat. So well done, Frank Disco Music. I assume that's Frank. Cloudy Rice, I'm not sure what your name is, but you have the dope collection. So thank you guys for submitting. Thank you to everybody for submitting. We had some really cool boots this week as well. And hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday. Good luck next week. All right, performance breakdown section. So I want to go over really, really quickly the performance breakdown of the new Phantom 6. Now, as I said before, caveat, 15 minutes in the boots. As a self-proclaimed boot expert, I laugh because obviously the only reason you would say, well, yeah, I would say I'm a boot expert. I've tried more boots than most people have, which I'm very lucky about. But the 15 minutes that I had with the boots, I just wanted to give you a quick performance breakdown of both of these models because I think they are a little bit different than the GX2s. and more similar to the GX1s. So as far as both goes, the similarities and differences between the two, let's get these on the overhead camera so you guys can see the boots a little bit better. So the low top does what the low top does and what you'd expect it to. It's very grippy. It's got a ton of nice texturing to the upper. This orange section here is a little bit more hard, I guess. So if you see my thumb pushing in there, and then you see my thumb pushing in there, this knit is a lot more dense, or they've added an extra amount of kind of coating to these yarns or whatever they've done here to make it a little bit stiffer. So this is actually more of a harder spot, which is really cool because it kind of reminds me of the shield on the Phantom Venoms, which I absolutely love. The pair that I own is way back in the corner there. It's really hard for me to get out because I've got to like move the entire wall. But regardless, that little synthetic, actually plastic piece on the Phantom Venoms, it's not plasticky by any means, but it definitely does feel more like kind of a traditional grip element than this upper, which feels knit-like to the foot, but obviously grippy on the ball, which is really cool. Sole plate on both is very, very much improved. Both of these sole plates are incredibly fun to play in. A lot more structure to them, which is really nice. I love the fact that they've gone with a much more kind of structured sole plate in the midfoot in particular. So with both boots, they have this sort of spine to them that really add, like we're talking like massively adds. I'm like really trying to bend it here. It's got a bunch of snap here in the forefoot on the AG model, which we've not really seen from Nike in the past. Most AG models, or at least all conical stud patterns, have been pretty flimsy. And then this one even more so. So the responsiveness of their sole plates, it seems like Nike has listened to consumers and been like, hey, GX2 wasn't really our vibe from a shape perspective. Can you go back to a design that you had with the GX1? We really loved that. So we'd much rather have sort of a fly knit and grip knit combination and also make your sole plates just better. And I've been harping about this forever. Like Nike has to be better with their sole plates. And lo and behold, here we go. So sole plate is much better. Upper feels very, very similar to the GX1. It is slightly softer than the GX1. Part of that also could be because of the width, but that will kind of take a little bit more play testing time to figure out. And then the shape is also more accommodating, which is awesome. Now, as far as differences between the high cut and the low cut, really the major difference here is going to be in the lockdown of the boot. Because the low top is quite low volume in terms of how high it is. So we had this with the GX1. It's a very slim, a very low profile football boot. It's going to be, if it fits you, it's going to have some really great lockdown. If it doesn't fit you, it's probably not going to have that great a lockdown. And so that's where I think the high cut model might be a really good option for players who maybe have a little bit of a narrower foot. If you have a narrower foot, I would probably suggest just going with the Vapor or the Superfly. However, if you are somebody who has a narrower foot and you want a high cut model, but you don't like air zoom, the high cut GX, I keep saying GX, the high cut Phantom 6 is actually quite a fun model to play in. And I am not a high cut guy, but these are very locked in. They're very fun to play in. The extra little grip knit here is pretty much indistinguishable from the low cut model. It's not going to give you that much extra grip, but the boots are very much like what we got on the high cut model of the DF model of GX1, which was a very fun football boot to play in as well. Moving on to boot culture and trends. So I pulled one of the questions from you guys this week who submitted because I thought it was very relevant to the boot trends, basically, and boot brand trends. And Daniel asks, what are your thoughts on brands like Mizuno and Asics moving away from K-leather? Is this just a temporary due to regulations, or is this a long-term shift? Now, I have two pairs of boots, one Asics and one Mizuno. These are kind of the most comparable sort of top-end football boots from the Asics and the Mizuno brands as far as construction and one-for-one kind of, both have a very, very similar conical stud pattern. Both have K leather in the forefoot, synthetic leather in the rear. suede heel liners, standard U-throat tongues. Like these are basically the same boot, just from different brands. This obviously being the Morelia Neo 4 non-beta, made in Japan. And these are the Asics DS Lite X Fly 5 in firm ground. So both fantastic pairs of football boots. I highly recommend you go and buy a pair if you are on the market for that style of football boot. They are both incredible in terms of comfort, incredible in terms of performance. I would say that if you're looking for a boot that is the most premium, the Mizuno is going to be the feeling of kind of the most soft and premium feeling boot. If you're looking actually for the most comfort underfoot, I would actually go for the Asics boot. I think Asics, better than any brand on the market, really does that sort of cushioned underfoot feeling and roll forward kind of better than everybody else, just in terms of their regular release boots, which is pretty sweet. So thank you, Daniel, first of all, for your question. In terms of moving away from K-leather, I think this is an interesting one, because I think on one side, I'm trying to be very objective about this. I can probably share my thoughts at the very end, but on one side, I think you have the sort of animal activist types that are, and again, I'm going to caveat this with, I am really not making any judgments based on how you personally listening to this feel about animal rights or manufacturing or the way that factories operate. Like, none of that stuff. I just want to give you guys kind of a big picture assessment of what's going on. So in terms of K-leather in particular, there are, I think, a lot of I want to say climate activists, no, animal activists, or animal rights activists, I should say, who are part of the manufacturing, or going after manufacturers, going after the manufacturing world, going after big brands, saying we need to step away from animal products because it's either not sustainable, or it's inhumane, or the way that you treat animals is in the manufacturing or the pre-manufacturing process is not good, and you're using these animals just for their hides, et cetera, et cetera. Then on the other side of that, you have kind of the purists who are saying, from an objective perspective, K-leather is the best material upper we found that is on the more natural leather side. Asics now moving into the silky wrap material has been interesting, because the silky wrap is so good and so leather-like, consumers may not really know the difference. The only issue with that is that there are parts of K-leather, including durability and including the way that the structure just fits and feels. There's just something special about K-leather from a user perspective. But again, that's kind of both sides of the argument coin. And there are others in there that are maybe a little bit more kind of on the center as far as where they stand on this issue. But I think the big thing, and the reason why a lot of brands are moving away from K-leather, actually has nothing to do with sustainability. It has nothing to do with animal rights. It has nothing to do with any of that. It literally just comes down to how expensive K-leather is to produce. Because K-leather only comes from one place, Australia. I'm pointing at myself, but I don't produce K-leather. Australia is the only place that has kangaroos. And one of them, I'm actually trying to get into one of the major companies that distributes and sources and is the source for K-leather in Australia, who do all the sourcing for Nike and Adidas. And they are the manufacturer of K-leather, and they can treat it in a bunch of different ways. Obviously, with these two boots, like, this is both K-leather, but it's actually been treated in slightly different ways. So the way that it feels on your hand and on feet is slightly different. And brands can pay for different price points of treated K-leather. Mizuno and Adler and some of these really, really nice K-leather boots are going to be at the very top end premium price point, which is why Mizuno in Western markets will charge dumb amounts of money. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to how much money it's taking to manufacture. Because let's say you have a boot like the DS Lite X Fly 5 and you put it up against the X Fly Pro 3. Now, let's assume that the X Fly Pro 3 also had the same sole plate, right? So the R&D that went into that other sole plate is going to be a little bit different. The leather model is, all of a sudden you have a leather component that you have to source from this place that's really expensive. You have a synthetic that you have used for a couple different generations now. Maybe you've tweaked it and stuff, but it's you produce it and do R&D once, and then you can use it for a generation or two. And then you have the suede that's basically the same for many generations of that boot, and it's also the same on the DS Lite X-Fly Pro 3. And so you have multiple components of this boot and the X-Fly Pro 3 that are identical, so to speak, and they're all products that, similar to the last, the soleplate, everything, once you've done the R&D once, then you can just reap the benefits of basically zero input cost other than buying more stock and buying more stock and more parts basically to put boots together. The complication becomes when you have a K-leather boot and then you have a synthetic part of the boot. So this is comparing the K-leather on the X-Fly 5 with the X-Fly Pro 3 synthetic. The synthetic, once you've created the material, once you've patented it, once you've basically said to that factory, hey, we are the only ones who can use that. We are touting it silky wrap. You are the silky wrap go-to. Once they have it, a synthetic material is dramatically less expensive to produce. And please excuse me if this is completely obvious to you guys. I'm just trying to explain it for those who maybe don't understand it as much. And once a synthetic has been created, it's like, okay, then the cost of that, the rollout long tail cost of that football boot being produced is dramatically lower than one with K-leather, because the ones with K-leather will be sort of subject to the raising and lowering of prices of that particular treatment of K-leather, right? So let's say I don't actually know how this works, which is why I want to go up to this factory in Sydney and actually, or maybe it's Brisbane, and actually talk to the people who do the production of the K-leather. But let's assume it's on an alphabet scale. So A being the highest possible grade treated K-leather that only gets used in made in Japan Mizuno products, made in Japan Asics products, luxury goods, et cetera, et cetera. And then Z is like it's still K-leather, but it's basically just like raw off the animal, essentially. I'm sort of joking, but like you get the idea, right? If you had a B, let's say Asics uses B grade, which is still crazy, 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 that B grade price may go up and down despite it being the same treatment because of things like Daniel mentioned, which is regulations, tariffs, shipping costs, et cetera, right? So there's all these complicated factors, but really you can boil it down to the reason people are moving away from K-leather is because it's less expensive to produce, and because then you're not dependent upon and sort of in this issue where you've constantly got to be in either litigation or battles or something with protesters and people who are animal rights activists. Again, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying that it's just less of a headache and it's less expensive. So it's like, of course, the business decision would be to go synthetic. Unfortunately, I think the way that enthusiasts would want is at least have one or two K-leather products. If you're a Nike and you've got three silos, essentially, you got your Phantom, you got your Mercurial, and you've got your Tiempo, we'd love to see at least one boot, like make the Tiempo leather or rename the Tiempo something else and then do a Premier in leather. Like, I think that's what purists would like to see. So those are kind of, and then in terms of my thoughts are the enthusiast ones. I am aware that the kangaroo problem in Australia, I would say that a lot of the, I don't know enough to argue about the treatment of these animals if they are being raised and produced only for K-leather, which as far as I know is not, like, there's nothing like that going on. We are in a country that actually hires people to go out and kill kangaroos because they are almost to the point of pest now. There are so many of them, and they're eating crops and they're destroying land and they're habitating. They're living in places that they shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. I'm no expert, but I do think that if somebody is going after animal hide that has already been deemed or sort of doomed to die, so to speak, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I am of the opinion that I think because of the nature of kangaroos here in Australia, because there are so many of them, again, pricing aside, cost of production aside, it would make me happy. And I believe that at least every brand should have one K-leather football boot because I just think it's heritage and I think it is a special experience. Like even the difference between the Copa Pure 3 and Adidas, which is a great pair of football boots, really nice leather in the forefoot. Obviously, it's a synthetic kind of hybrid material, but even that boot is still not the premium quality that this boot is. It's just not the same. So those are my thoughts. I wish people would continue with K-leather. It's going to make me very, very sad if brands like Asics and especially Mizuno, who is known for their K-leather, stop making K-leather football boots. That's going to be a big bummer for me. Okay, behind the scenes industry talk. I wanted to give a quick shout out to a brand that this has been a long time coming in terms of a collaboration, which I'm sure you'll see of soon. But I got so many questions about this Arsenal bag, and I wanted to give a little quick shout out to Unwanted FC, who produced this bag. So this was actually funny enough, when I went and trained with Mark Griffin, who is at GCFC training. Mark gave me, he was like, I know you're an Arsenal guy and I don't really wear this. And I think he's a United fan as well. And anyway, so he gave me a training kit, which was this Arsenal training kit in blue with the green accents. And it's an old Puma one. So it's from a while ago. And I didn't really wear it all that much. It sort of was sitting in my closet. And when Unwanted reached out, and Unwanted is basically Kevin and Keith, who are a set of twins, and they run their own brand and they basically upcycle boots and kits and all that stuff. And again, they're not paying me for this. I just thought this is such a cool stuff. And I actually had a conversation with them the other day. So they are, producing boot bags like this with the kit. So they obviously provide the little sticker and then they've got this little, here, I'll actually put it on the unwanted thing. So there you go. So there, and then they've got this little Unwanted FC tag there, but this is actually the kit. And then you open it up and it's a really nice kind of lined boot bag, and boots fit in there. You've seen them on my Instagram recently carrying around the boots. I think it is such a cool thing to put any old kit, whether it's, I imagine if I knew about these guys when I was back in the club days, because back in club in America, we basically had to redo our kit. We had new kits every 2 years. And so let's say I had my kit in 2010. We get to 2012 and we have the same colors, the same badge. It's just maybe a new brand of kit or whatever. I would have loved to make a wallet, a boot bag or whatever out of my old kits instead of doing something different with them or throwing them away. I mean, we donated all of them, but like I would have loved to do something cool like that and have Unwanted deal with those kind of things. So if you are somebody who is keen on products like this, definitely go check them out. I love their stuff and we'll probably be doing some collaborations later on in the future, but it's definitely a really cool way to keep all the memories of boots and they do like wallets out of leather football boots, which is sick, and keychains and stuff. So if you are somebody who's like, man, I have this old kit that I really want to keep around, but I don't want to wear, like, do I frame it? Maybe consider upcycling, because I think that's really cool. All right, section 3, market report. So resale market trends. It feels like we have finally got to the point of being out of the drop hype and getting regular up-to-date boots under retail. In terms of resale markets are now tertiary markets, meaning IG resellers and places like StockX and GOAT and things like that. It feels like we're finally in a place where we're no longer seeing the brand new football boot that just came out for $30 under RRP or whatever. We're finally seeing the resale market dip back into, or I should say, climb up back into the place where it was and where I get excited about, which is all of the really cool retro boots that people have. Maybe it's even just a pair of, I don't know, GT1s or Nike Phantom GT1s, or maybe it's a pair of Predator LZs or things that maybe aren't that old, but are retro enough that they've got some special feelings in them. And every time I look through Instagram, it feels like I'm not now seeing the what is that new Nike pack called, right? We're not seeing the Fear Nothing pack from Nike, and we're not seeing all of a sudden all these resellers are doing a brand new Nike drop for like $30 under retail. It's like, no, they're all just selling the really cool old stuff that I feel like resellers are on the market for. Like those are the types of things that boot resellers get excited about and enthusiastic about. Obviously, business is business, money is money. If you can sell those brand new boots for under retail for still a profit because you get them from the factory, fair play to you. But it is just nice from my perspective to see that. There are also a pretty big slowdown of the Hypervenom 1 regen market. These boots are now, you can find them now for anywhere between $300 and $450 as opposed to like $600, $700. I have still seen a few pairs for like $600 in really sought after sizes, but I would guess that those boots aren't going to go as quickly as the boots that are a little bit more sort of resale reasonable. As I mentioned in either last week's episode, it wouldn't have been last week's because that was the Q&A. The weeks before, the week before, I basically talked about how the resale market kind of has a threshold, at least for football boots right now, of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think for most people, I'd argue that kind of that $450 price point for a pair of football boots, especially if it's one that you're going to actually wear, is very much kind of the high end. And then 600 being, so anything above 600 is like insane collector's item or signed pair of match worn boots from a pro. The cool thing though is that regular release colorways are selling out really quickly, at least here in Australia. I haven't talked to anybody at unisportproductstock.com about this yet, but in terms of Ultra, the Phantom 6, this new colorway, despite there being the new Nike colorway coming out that's a lot better than this, frankly, this boot sold out in like a day at Ultra, which is pretty crazy. Like that's pretty remarkable for a brand new pair of football boots. Obviously, the Phantoms are always really popular and stuff, but I think that's just sick. In terms of notable boots resurfacing, we had a couple different ones that were nuts, like really, really nuts, and a special one at the very end. So at Shop Crampons had a photo and is selling the orange regens, the Hydra regens, and a pair of Phantom Ultras in orange, all in the same photo. I just thought the photo looked sick. I was like, that's cool. A bunch of Hypervenom style football boots. Fun fact, they all have the same sole plate. That's one of the reasons why the Phantom Ultra is one of my all-time favorite boots of all time. All-time favorite boots of all time. That is really redundant. You get what I'm saying, though. Really, really cool. We also had at Boots Not Dead, or at Boots_Not_Dead, which had a ridiculous pair of the X Speed Portal .1 Bugatti Chiron boots in the black and metallic blue. I think they're a 10.5 UK or maybe a 10 UK. I would love to get these boots because I am such a petrol head and I really enjoy cars. Whoa, dude. I have not seen these on the resale market in a while. So that was really cool. And then Boots Not Dead also put up a pair of, speaking of Clash packs, the CTR 360 Maestri 2 Elites in the Clash pack colorway. Very, very cool. Basically a kind of this light, beautiful blue color with the white in the back. Amazing, amazing pair of football boots. They're brand new. I think they're a 9 US as well, which is annoying because I want to buy them. Anyway. And then we had at Cleats Corner _1 with the Mizuno Morelia Ultralights. For those of you who did not see last week's episode of the Q&A, there was a question about what are sort of the boots that you wish you had. And that boot video is actually going to release this week, I think, this next week. And it's going to be basically my grail boots, the boots that I have always wanted to get at some point, have in my collection. As you can see from the photo, Cleats Corner had a pair of the Morelia Ultralights in my size 9 US. And so I hit him up and I said, hey, any chance these are still available? And I have the Morelia Ultralights on the way. So as you can see, I'm not only preaching dealers, I actually do business with them as well. I paid for the Morelia Ultralights because that's something we're not going to do a sponsored thing for this. I am very excited. The Morelia Ultralights are coming to the channel very soon, and it is an absolute grail pair for me. I don't even know if they fit that well because I've never tried them on, but I am just absolutely thrilled. So big shout out to @CleatsCorner_1, which you guys will see. He has like nuts stock as well, like some crazy pairs of football boots. And for those of you who did reach out to me, I had 4 different DMs from people who watched that last week's episode about the Morelia Ultralight. When I answered the question, I basically was like, I'm not going to give the whole video away of the Grail boots, but I will tell you one of them. One of them is the Morelia Ultralight. 4 different DMs with a screenshot of what's on the screen right now. And so thank you to all 4 of you guys. I did find that story before that video released. However, I really, really, really appreciate you guys reaching out because that has helped me source a lot of boots. So thank you to those of you who reached out. Stock availability and drops. All right. So we have new drops means more stock in the summer, winter, obviously here coming in as well. Expect some big drops from Nike and Adidas to be available everywhere all summer. So we're probably going to see less colorways, but we're going to see more stock of the good colorways. So for that new, SparkFusion for sure, but also for the Fear Nothing pack for the Euros, we are going to see, and the new Adidas pack that's coming out very soon, we are going to see probably a lot of stock of that colorway because I don't think we'll see any new colors until either the knockout stages of the Euros or the sort of the fall collections that will inevitably come out in August, September when the new Prem season starts and La Liga seasons, et cetera, which is really, really cool. All right, section 4, audience questions. Now, you too can ask questions at noahcavanaugh.com/podcast. Enter your question, enter your name, tick the box for weekly newsletters. There's 2 that go out every week and some really, really cool topics recently that we've been covering on the newsletter. So Sam asks, I have a pretty standard shaped foot, not too wide or not too narrow. Currently wearing size 10 Puma Ultra 5s. What other boots would you recommend trying? Well, Sam, if you have a really neutral shaped foot or a standard shaped foot, you're probably going to fit in most things. If you are interested in actually sort of average in terms of forefoot, midfoot, and heel area width, I would strongly recommend going to my website, noahcavanaugh.com/shop, and downloading the free size guide that you can find on there. It's 75 or some odd pages long. I've put a ton of effort into it. It updates every quarter. So it just got its new update for quarter 1 and 2. So all the boots that just came out are in there. I will probably do update for the Phantom 6 in there as well, just because it kind of came out right on the cusp of quarter 2 and quarter 3. Needless to say, that is a completely updated set of boots, and there is a total size chart of every single boot, how you compare, and all of the metrics for sizing. So I go through forefoot, midfoot, and heel area as far as width goes, and you can decide and find all the boots that are sort of normal or average width for you. Eric asks, would you consider doing boot reviews in Spanish or your for your Latin American audience? I don't speak Spanish fluently. I understand it pretty well, but I don't speak Spanish fluently. I would consider dubbing at some point. I am just not quite there yet from a channel perspective and from an investment perspective. It takes a lot of time and money to either hire somebody to do the dubbing or to have a fully other person who's speaking Spanish as part of the channel. The eventual dream is that I have the sort of the Noah Cavanaugh brand or whatever the brand kind of evolves into has personalities in all of sort of the major world languages, as well as female players and stuff who come on the channel and give their perspective on, hey, like I can't speak from a woman's perspective because I'm not a chick, right? So, or we want somebody who can take all the information that I've done and I've tested because I'm the one who actually has the IP and has the intellectual property and the testing, and it's on brand for what the brand is, and can take that information and talk about it in Spanish, right? So that would be really cool. That's the eventual dream. But Eric, unfortunately, right this second, I'm very much considering it. It's very much part of the kind of the decade plan of the channel, but it's not something that I can do right this minute unless I have a person who sort of raises their hand and volunteers. And that would take kind of, I think, a lot of more logistics because they need to be here in terms of filming, because otherwise I have to pay for like a whole film crew to go to their place. Anyway, it's very complicated logistically unless that person is here in Melbourne. Hamad asks, how do you decide which boots are worth keeping for long-term testing versus ones you get rid of quickly? This is a really good question. So I've kind of answered this a little bit, I guess, but it was more in reference to what I keep in my collection versus what I get rid of. In terms of what I keep for long-term testing, I really do my best to long-term test everything except for the boots that I have spent maybe upwards of about 5 hours in and they still haven't broken in properly, or maybe they are broken in, but they still don't fit me very well. That's a situation where it's just going to be dangerous for my feet. Like it's at some point I have to be aware that in order for me to do this for as long as possible, I really have to be cautious of the way that how I take care of my feet, basically. And so I want to make sure that I can that I can do that for a really long time. And so the way that I do that is basically I give pretty much every boot a chance, and I really try to test it outside. Like I test it for sure outside of the original playtest video. So I do about anywhere between 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes for the initial play test, give you guys my thoughts, produce that video. Then I'll go out and do another, 2 hours or whatever of playing off camera. And that's sort of where I discover, like, okay, for me, for a great example of this is the Puma Ultra 5 Ultimate. I love that boot. That was why it was part of the 2024 top 10. The unfortunate part of that is that boot just doesn't fit my foot that well as much as I try to break it in. The midfoot's just too narrow. It's not going to fit my feet. And it's a boot that I just feel uncomfortable in. And so that boot may not get a 1 month review because I don't quite feel like I have enough experience in it to be able to warrant handing you guys a 1 month review of like, yo, I've actually tested these for a lot of hours. So that's an example. Really, that's the only caveat for me. So the only time that I ever say, I'm just going to sell these or I'm just going to get rid of really quickly is a boot that I just simply don't fit in. Okay, and Theo asks, I just bought the Predator 25s. They fit great, but I'm curious how they compare to older Predators you've worn in terms of touch and responsiveness. The only thing that they're really comparable to is the Predator LZ and LZ2 series, which were also a hybrid touch upper, very, very similar feel. The rest of the Predators are either synthetic or leather, and they feel quite a lot thicker and pretty different than the current generation Preds. That's why I say sort of the current generation Pred is like that perfect combination of modern day and OG power boot type feel. Theo also asks, what are your thoughts on the rise of synthetic leather alternatives like Grip Knit or Fusion Skin? Do they live up to the hype, or is it just marketing? Grip Knit's not a synthetic leather alternative. Grip Knit is a knit boot. It's a completely different material. However, things like Hybrid Touch, which I probably think you meant, Hybrid Touch or Fusion Skin. Fusion Skin is actually leather, so it's not synthetic either. So I'm curious to know, maybe your question is just thoughts on the rise of synthetic alternatives to leather. And synthetics have existed for a really long time. So for me, it's just a matter of whether that synthetic is really better than what we've had in the past. So that's something to keep in mind. Benjamin asks, what are your go-to drills when testing new boots for touch, shooting, and traction? Well, if you watch any of my boot reviews, you'll know. Dawson, do you think laceless boots have peaked, or are they here to stay long-term? I think that we are in a phase that unless a brand figures out a way to make the lockdown of a laceless football boot the same as a laced one, which by the way would be near impossible unless you had an internal structure inside of that laceless boot to make the midfoot lockdown as good, which it's never going to be. I think we've kind of peaked. I think Predator 25 laceless right now, the F50 laceless right now is kind of the best we're going to get for probably a little while, save for a brand that comes out with something that is just radically insane as far as technology goes, right? So just that's kind of the way that I would kind of look at that. Tariq says, I train on turf 90% of the time, but games are usually on firm ground. Should I buy two separate boots, or is there a good hybrid option? Well, if you have the budget to buy two separate boots, and I've said this in many videos, I would highly recommend getting an FG and an AG pair of football boots, but both of them be the same model. So let's say you go with the low top Phantom Sixes and just get one in AG and one in FG. That way you have the most seamless playing experience between the two boots that you're wearing. So it's the same feel. You don't have to adjust to a different style of football boot, a different fit, a different feel that's going to make you maybe move or play in slightly different ways, like really 1% type things. If you can only afford one pair, which is super great as well, I'd probably recommend something that's got a conical-ish stud pattern to it. So maybe something like a Neo 4 Beta that's got something like that, or something like this. Let's use the overhead camera because it's here. So something like this where you're going to have no problem on AG, you're going to have no problem on FG, and it's really kind of built for both. That would be my strong suggestion to you. So that's how I'd go about that. Jin Woo asks, what Mizuno boot would you recommend for someone transitioning from the Nike Tiempo 9s? Okay, so I did bring out my pair of Nike Tiempo 9s, which are one of the most beloved Tiempos, I think, of all time. This happens to be debatably the best colorway out of all of them. I absolutely adore this color. This is a boot that is really fantastic. Overall, nice, pretty decent K-leather. It's not the most amazing on the market, but it is really good. It's really solid. If you really like this boot, I would probably keep bringing out this one, only because I think the Morelia Neo 4 non-beta edition is about the closest thing you're going to get to a Tiempo, other than maybe the DNA. The DNA is the only thing that I'd say has sort of the plushness and the thickness of the Tiempo Legend 9, but has a modern sole plate. The normal Morelia 2 is going to feel probably too traditional, but the DNA in particular, if you can get your hands on a pair of those, would be awesome. But my first recommendation would be the Neo 4 non-beta edition for the Tiempo comparable. Yuki asks, are there any high-quality leather boots with AG sole plates that you'd recommend for wide-footed players? Yes, there are quite a few. I think I would go, again, I'd probably echo the Mizuno thing. If you can get a pair of Asics C3s, which are an AG sort of Morelia 2 competitor from Tokyo Football, they host those, or they have those on their channel and their website. That's definitely one that I would consider. Excellent wide-footed boots in the Mizuno and the Asics range. Morelia 2 AG as well, really, really good. Neo 4 non-beta AG as well, really, really good. So those would be what I would go for. Reese asks, why don't pro players wear Blackout boots anymore? Is it purely aesthetic, or are there any performance reasons? No performance reasons from a Blackout pair of boots. Oftentimes pros wear, well, the only time really, unless there's like an academy pack, which Nike used to produce in the first part of every year, the reason they would wear a Blackout is when they were in between contracts and didn't want to advertise a particular brand. Obviously, with Blackout boots, especially in floodlights, it's pretty easy to tell what those boots are. And that's why brands have moved to whiteout prototypes as opposed to Blackout prototypes, because Blackout prototypes, when you take photos of them when players are outside training, it's pretty easy to tell what the materials are, what's going on, what type of boot it is, etc. With a whiteout, though, it's a lot harder to tell in harsh sunlight or in daylight in general. And so why don't players wear Blackout boots anymore? Most of the time, it's because most of the pros, or a lot of the pros, particularly at the top level, which I would assume you're talking about, pros at the top level are paid to wear football boots. And if you're paid to wear football boots, let's say I'm Adidas and I pay Declan Rice, let's talk about an Arsenal player. If I pay Declan Rice to wear a pair of Copa Pure 3s, which he does, that's his boot, and that's the boot that's sponsored. Adidas, we sponsor him. And if Adidas sponsors Declan Rice to play in a pair of Copa Pure 3s and he wears a Blackout pair of football boots, Adidas doesn't get any sort of media attention from that, other than potentially people being like, ooh, what is he wearing? But that isn't the same as him wearing a pair of our bright colors. And then everyone knows there's an Adidas 3 stripes on the side of that. So that goes direct to consumer. And that's more value per dollar we're spending on Declan to wear those Copas. It's better that he's wearing a bright pair of football boots or the newest colorway that's coming out to consumers. so that people go out and buy that same boot. That's just that's just like simple marketing. And that's how I would describe that. So that's probably why, that is why most pro players don't wear blackouts unless they are between contracts or they don't have a contract and they don't want to advertise for a particular brand. Kurt asks, have you ever had a boot that performed amazing in testing but fell apart quickly in durability? I think the first part of your question sort of negates the second part, which is if a boot performs amazing, it usually has pretty good durability. So that's, I would say that the only caveat to that question, and maybe the answer, is the original Hypervenom Phantom 1, which was so incredibly comfortable for me. It took a little bit of break in time, but they just fell apart really quickly. And I went through, I think, 6 or 7 pairs in about 5 months. And I kept returning them to Nike, kept getting a new pair, et cetera, et cetera. Arjun asks, are there any boots you'd recommend specifically for free kick takers or set piece specialists? No, your position and your attributes as a player have nothing to do with the boots you wear. There are ballers and free kick takers who wear speed boots. There are speedy, fast players who wear Predators and power boots. Like, it does not matter. It does not matter. Your position, your attributes have nothing to do with the boots you wear. As well, Arjun, if you are a player who's trying to get to the next level, I would probably stay away. This is a much longer conversation. I would probably stay away from calling yourself a self-proclaimed set piece specialist. When you say that, unless you are actually, let's say you're batting over 500, so every other free kick goes in the back of the net, you're not really a free kick specialist. And yes, I know top pros maybe are less than that, but like at a youth level or at a college level even, sure, there are such things as a free kick specialist, but not really. Like, the closest thing I think we have to that is Trent in the modern pro world. I would strongly suggest not calling yourself a free kick specialist. Practice free kicks, be really good at free kicks, no doubt, but be better at other things, because free kicks are not what wins football games for the most part. Felix, if you had to wear one pair of boots for an entire year, regardless of surface type and condition, what would you pick? Okay. I'm going to give you a couple different answers. And I brought probably way too many boots for this question, but I just got thrilled because I really like this type of stuff, like this type of question. So we have option number 1, which of course is no surprise to anybody, the Wave Cup SS. Amazing pair of football boots, incredible, so comfortable, perfect fit, unbelievable performance, great sole plate as well. Okay, number 1. These are in no particular order, by the way. Sokito Scudetta, very, very comfortable. It's all the things I want to like about the Messi F50, but I don't. Other than the sole plate, which I think the Messi F50 definitely beats this boot on. Hypervenom 1 Regen, amazing pair of football boots. I love every single inch of these, other than the fact that they have a really tiny lacing system area, and I need to still poke holes in this one, which I will do. Then I have the Morelia Proto, which I have actually poked holes in, as you can see here. So poked holes in the Morelia Proto. These are incredible. A boot that I just absolutely want to get in and play around in. And then finally, the F50 Regen, or the F50 Remake. Absolutely sensational pair of football boots. I love training and playing in these. So those are my 5. And yeah, any condition. I know you told me to do one, but I'm a boot nerd, so I don't have just one. Alvaro, last question. How do you clean and maintain your boots, especially the premium leather ones? I did a full video on the Ultra Football website about this, or Ultra Football YouTube channel about this, so definitely go check that one out. Is like how to maintain your football boots. All right, guys, that is it for today's episode number 15 of the Boot Report. I appreciate you being here. If you did, let's do, I always talk about emojis and then I never figure out what I actually want you guys to put in the comment section. Okay, so if you got to the end of this, I want you to put let's do the Iceman emoji, the like the ice, the blue guy who's like, icy, whatever. Yeah, ice emoji. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, be awesome. Take care. See y'all in the next video.